The massive space station called Stellar Heights slowly turned in the darkness between Earth and the Moon. Its crystal walls reflected the blue light from Earth below and the silver glow from Luna above. Inside the station, the most expensive restaurant in human space served food to the richest and most important people in the galaxy. Jake Morrison stepped out of his private shuttle and looked around with hungry eyes. He wore a bright red jacket covered in golden buttons and carried 3 small flying cameras that followed him everywhere. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his white teeth gleamed under the station's lights. Jake was 28 years old and had 40 million followers on social media across 12 different planets. "This is it, everyone," Jake said to his cameras, speaking loud enough for other people to hear. "Your boy Jake is about to eat at the most exclusive place in the galaxy. Time to show these rich people how a real influencer does things." The comments on his live stream moved so fast they looked like a waterfall of words. His followers loved when Jake caused trouble, especially with famous people. It made them feel like they were part of something big and exciting. Jake walked through the restaurant's front doors. The inside was even more beautiful than the outside. The floor was made of smooth black stone that looked like space itself, with tiny lights underneath that twinkled like stars. The walls were completely clear, giving everyone a perfect view of Earth and the Moon. Floating tables held diners from dozens of different planets, some human and some very much not human. "Look at this place," Jake whispered to his cameras, but loud enough for others to hear. "I bet these people think they're so special. Wait until they see what real star power looks like." Lisa Chun, the restaurant manager, walked over to Jake with a professional smile. She was a small woman in her 40s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back neatly. She had worked at Stellar Heights for 15 years and knew how to handle difficult customers. "Welcome to Stellar Heights, Mr. Morrison," she said politely. "We have your table ready." "My table?" Jake looked around the restaurant until his eyes stopped on a table by the biggest window. It had the best view of Earth and was clearly the most important spot in the whole place. "That's my table right there, the one with the perfect view." Lisa followed his gaze and her smile became a little forced. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but that table is already occupied. We have another excellent table prepared for you with a wonderful view of Luna." Jake's face turned red. He had specifically requested that table when he made his reservation 2 months ago. His followers expected him to get the best of everything, and he wasn't about to let them down now. "Who's sitting at my table?" Jake demanded, his voice getting louder. At the table in question sat a man who looked to be in his 70s. He had gray hair that was a bit messy and wore a simple black shirt and dark pants. Nothing about him looked special or important. He sat alone, quietly eating his soup and looking out at Earth with a peaceful expression on his face. "That's just some old guy," Jake said, staring at the man. "He doesn't look like anyone important. Why does he get the best table?" "Sir, all of our guests are important," Lisa said carefully. "Perhaps you would like to see your table? It really does have a lovely view." But Jake wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about the perfect video he could make. His followers would love to see him stand up to the rich people who thought they were better than everyone else. This old man was probably just some retired businessman who got lucky with the best table. Jake could turn this into viral gold. "Start recording everything," Jake told his cameras. "This is going to be good." The old man seemed to sense someone watching him and looked up from his soup. His eyes were kind and tired, like someone who had seen a lot of the world but still found it beautiful. When he saw Jake staring at him, he gave a small, friendly nod and went back to his meal. That simple gesture made Jake even angrier. Who did this old man think he was, acting so calm and superior? Jake's followers were already starting to comment about the situation. They could see the old man through Jake's cameras and were encouraging Jake to do something dramatic. "Go talk to him," one comment read. "Show him who's boss," said another. "Make him move," demanded a third. Jake felt the familiar rush of excitement. That came before he created great content. This was going to be perfect. He would embarrass this old nobody, get his rightful table, and give his followers exactly what they wanted to see. The video would probably get 1 billion views across the galaxy. The restaurant was getting busier as more diners arrived. Jake noticed several aliens among the crowd, including some tall blue beings from Centauri, and a group of the crystal-like creatures from the Rigel system. There were also humans who looked like they might be politicians or business leaders, all dressed in expensive clothes and speaking in quiet, important voices, but Jake only had eyes for his target. The old man continued eating his soup completely. Unaware that he was about to become the star of Jake's next viral video, Jake checked his follower count and smiled. The numbers were climbing as word spread that Jake Morrison was about to do something big. "All right, everyone," Jake said to his cameras, his voice full of confidence. "Time to show this old man what happens when you take something that belongs to Jake Morrison. This is going to be legendary." He started walking toward the table by the window, his cameras floating around him like electronic birds. Other diners began to notice the commotion and turned to watch. The old man looked up again, this time with a slightly confused expression as he saw Jake approaching with cameras rolling. Jake cracked his knuckles and put on his most charming smile, the one that had made him famous across the galaxy. He had no idea that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life, or that the quiet old man eating soup was about to change everything Jake thought he knew about power, respect, and what it really meant to be important in the universe. Jake walked up to the table where the old man sat eating his soup. His 3 cameras floated around him, recording everything from different angles. The live stream numbers kept climbing as more people joined to watch what Jake would do next. "Excuse me," Jake said loudly, making sure his voice carried across the restaurant. "I think you're sitting in my table." The old man looked up slowly from his soup. His face was calm and friendly, with deep lines around his eyes that showed he smiled. Often, he set down his spoon carefully and gave Jake his full attention. "I'm sorry?" the old man said quietly. His voice was warm and gentle, like someone talking to a nervous child. "This table," Jake said, pointing at the surface with his finger. "I reserved it months ago. This is supposed to be my table, and you're sitting in it." The old man glanced around the restaurant, then back at Jake. "I think there might be some confusion. The staff seated me here when I arrived. Perhaps you could check with them." Jake's cameras captured every word, every expression. His followers were going crazy in the comments, telling him to be tougher, to not let this old man push him around. The viewer count was now over 200,000 and still growing. "Listen, old man," Jake said, his voice getting louder. "I don't know who you think you are, but I'm Jake Morrison. I have 40 million followers across the galaxy. When I make a reservation, I expect to get what I paid for." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "Jake Morrison. I don't think I know that name, but it's nice to meet you, Jake. I'm Keanu." "I don't care what your name is," Jake snapped. "What I care about is that you're sitting in my spot. Look at yourself. Man, you're wearing a $20 shirt and probably drove here in some beat-up old shuttle. This table is for important people, not random nobodies." Other diners were starting to stare now. A few of them had their own recording devices out, filming Jake's performance. The blue-skinned Centaurians at a nearby table whispered to each other in their musical language. The crystal beings from Rigel turned their geometric heads to watch the scene. Keanu remained perfectly calm. "I understand you're upset, Jake, but I think if you talk to the restaurant staff, they can help sort this out. I'm sure they have other tables that would work well for you." "Other tables?" Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Do you see this view? Do you see how perfect this spot is? This is the best table in the most expensive restaurant in human space, and some old nobody is just sitting here like he owns the place. Jake turned to face his cameras directly. Can you believe this, everyone? This old guy thinks he's too good to move for someone who actually matters. Look at him just sitting there, acting all calm and superior. The comment stream was moving so fast it was just a blur of words. Most of Jake's followers were cheering him on, but a few were starting to ask questions. Some people were saying the old man seemed familiar, but Jake was too focused on his performance to notice. Lisa Chun, the restaurant manager, hurried over to the table. Her face looked worried, and she kept glancing between Jake and Keanu like she was trying to figure out how to fix a very complicated problem. "Mr. Morrison," she said carefully, "perhaps we could discuss this privately? I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone." "No way," Jake said, waving her off. "This is going out live to millions of people. They need to see how these fancy places really work. They give the best tables to random old people while real celebrities get treated like garbage." "Sir," Lisa tried again, "if you would just let me explain the situation, ... "What's to explain?" Jake interrupted. "Your restaurant messed up, and now you're trying to cover for it. This old guy probably slipped the hostess some cash to get a table he doesn't deserve." Keanu finally spoke up again. "Jake, I think you might want to listen to what Ms. Chun has to say. She's just trying to help." "Don't tell me what to do," Jake snapped at him. "You're nobody. You're sitting here alone, eating soup like some sad old man with no friends. When's the last time anyone even recognized you on the street?" The restaurant had gone almost completely quiet now. Even the alien diners had stopped their conversations to watch what was happening. Jake felt a thrill of excitement. This was exactly the kind of dramatic content his followers loved. "Let me tell you something, old man," Jake continued, moving closer to the table. "In my world, influence is everything. I post one video and millions of people see it. I recommend a restaurant and they get booked solid for months. I say a movie is good and it makes an extra $1 billion. That's real power. That's why I deserve this table and you don't." Keanu listened to all of this with the same calm expression. He didn't look angry or upset. If anything, he looked a little sad, like he was watching someone hurt themselves without knowing it. "That sounds like a lot of responsibility," Keanu said quietly. "Having that much influence over people's choices must be difficult sometimes." Jake didn't expect that response. He was used to people getting angry or backing down when he confronted them. This old man's calm reaction was throwing off his rhythm. "It's not difficult when you know how to use it right," Jake said, trying to get back on track. "But I guess you wouldn't understand that, would you? You're just some regular person who got lucky with a good table." At a table across the restaurant, Dr. Amanda Rodriguez was having dinner with two colleagues from the Galactic Medical Council. She had been trying to ignore Jake's loud behavior, but something about the old man at the window table had caught her attention. She pulled out her personal tablet and started searching through news photos and government databases. Meanwhile, Captain Sam Peterson of the Federation Peacekeeping Force was enjoying a rare night off when his personal communicator started buzzing with urgent messages. He glanced at the device and his face went pale as he read the incoming alerts, but Jake noticed none of this. He was too busy performing for his cameras and his growing audience. The viewer count had passed 500,000 people, and the comments were getting wilder by the minute. "Here's what's going to happen," Jake announced to both Keanu and his cameras. "You're going to finish your soup, pay your bill, and move to a different table. And I'm going to sit here where I belong. That's how the real world works, old man. Important people get the best spots, and everyone else makes room." Keanu took a slow sip of his soup and looked out at Earth spinning slowly below them. "When?" He turned back to Jake. His expression was still kind, but there was something deeper in his eyes now. something that suggested he had seen much more of the real world than Jake could possibly imagine. "I think," Keanu said very quietly, "you might be surprised by how the real world actually works." Dr. Amanda Rodriguez stared at her tablet screen, her eyes growing wide with shock. She had found what she was looking for in the Federation diplomatic archives. The photo on her screen showed the same kind eyes and gentle face as the old man being harassed by Jake Morrison. She quickly showed the image to her dinner companions. "Oh my stars," whispered Dr. Helen Park, a surgeon from Mars Colony. "Is that really him?" "It has to be," Amanda said, her voice barely audible. "Look at the bone structure, the eyes, everything. Matches. That's Ambassador Keanu Reeves." Dr. Bobby Chun, Amanda's third colleague, nearly choked on his drink. "The Ambassador Reeves? The one who stopped the war with the Zeta Reticuli? The man who saved 3 billion lives on Europa?" Amanda nodded slowly, still staring between her tablet and the scene unfolding across the restaurant. Jake Morrison was still standing over Keanu, cameras recording everything, completely unaware of who he was publicly humiliating. At his table near the bar, Captain Sam Peterson's personal communicator wouldn't stop buzzing. Message after message poured in from Federation Command, from the diplomatic corps, and from security agencies across human space. All of them said the same thing. Ambassador Keanu Reeves was supposed to be at Stellar Heights tonight for a secret meeting with alien representatives, and someone was broadcasting his location live to millions of people. Sam looked up from his device and saw Jake's cameras floating around the window table. His blood ran cold as he realized what was happening. The most important diplomat in human history was being harassed by some social media troublemaker, and it was all going out live across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Jake was getting more aggressive by the minute. His viewer count had climbed to over 1 million people, and the comments were getting more and more excited. Most of his followers were cheering him on, telling him to make the old man leave. "You know what your problem is?" Jake said, pointing his finger at Keanu. "You think just because you're old, people should respect you automatically. But respect is earned, and you haven't done anything to earn mine." Keanu set down his spoon and folded his hands on the table. "You're absolutely right, Jake. Respect should be earned. I hope I've tried to earn it through my actions over the years." "What actions?" Jake laughed. "Sitting in restaurants eating soup, reading books, being old and boring." At the Centaurian table, the blue-skinned aliens were becoming agitated. Their musical language got faster and more urgent as they recognized the human they had only heard about in stories. One of them, a tall female with silver markings on her arms, stood up and started walking toward their table. The crystal beams from Rigel were also stirring. Their geometric bodies began to glow with different colors, which in their species meant they were feeling strong emotions. A few other alien diners were starting to whisper and point, but Jake was too focused on his performance to notice any of this. He was in his element, creating the kind of dramatic content that made him famous. "Here's the truth, old man," Jake continued. "The universe doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter if you're nice or polite or whatever. What matters is results. What matters is making things happen. And the only way to make things happen is to take what you deserve." Lisa Chun tried one more time to interrupt. "Mr. Morrison, please, if you would just allow me to explain, explain what?" Jake snapped at her. "That your restaurant gives the best tables to random nobodies, while real celebrities get the leftovers. There's nothing to explain. This is just bad business." Captain Peterson stood up from his table and started walking toward the commotion. His Federation uniform drew looks from other diners, and several alien delegates turned to watch him approach. Sam's face was grim as he checked his communicator one more time and saw even more urgent messages coming in. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez was also moving now, leaving her dinner companions to approach the window table. She couldn't stand watching this anymore, knowing who Keanu really was and what he had done for humanity and the galaxy. "Young man," Amanda called out to Jake as she got closer. "I think you should stop this right now." Jake turned to face her, his cameras following the movement. "And who are you supposed to be? Another person who thinks I should just accept bad service?" "I'm Dr. Amanda Rodriguez from the Galactic Medical Council," she said firmly. "And you have no idea who you're talking to." Jake rolled his eyes. "Great. Another doctor who thinks her degree makes her special. Let me guess, you want to give me a lecture about being polite to elderly people?" But Amanda wasn't backing down. She looked directly at Keanu, her face full of respect and recognition. "Ambassador, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. This young man clearly doesn't know who you are." Jake's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "Ambassador? What are you talking about?" Keanu held up a gentle hand to Amanda. "It's all right, Dr. Rodriguez. Jake is just upset about the table situation. We can work this out." "Ambassador?" Jake repeated, looking confused. His live stream comments were starting to change too. Some viewers were asking questions, wondering what the doctor meant. Captain Peterson reached the table, just as the Centaurian female arrived from the other direction. The tall blue alien looked down at Keanu with what appeared to be deep reverence in her large, dark eyes. "Great Peacemaker," she said in accented but clear English. "We did not know you were here tonight. Our delegation would be honored to greet you properly." Jake's cameras caught every word, broadcasting the alien's respectful greeting to over 1 million viewers. The comment stream was starting to shift now, with more and more people asking who this old man really was. "Peacemaker?" Jake said, his voice getting higher. "What are you all talking about?" Captain Peterson stepped forward, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Captain Sam Peterson of the Federation Peacekeeping Force. I need you to stop recording immediately and step away from this table." "What? No way," Jake protested. "This is a public place, and I have every right to be here. I'm not doing anything illegal." "Sir," Peterson said firmly, "you are currently harassing one of the most important diplomatic figures in human space. This incident is already causing problems that reach far beyond this restaurant." Jake looked around the table at all the serious faces surrounding him. Dr. Rodriguez, Captain Peterson, the tall Centaurian alien, and several other diners who had gathered to watch. Even Lisa Chun looked like she was barely holding back panic, but it was Keanu's face that made Jake pause. The old man wasn't angry or upset. Instead, he looked sad and tired, like someone who had seen this kind of behavior too many times before. "I still don't understand what's going on," Jake said, but his voice was less confident now. "Who exactly do you people think this old guy is?" Captain Peterson checked his communicator again and saw a new message that made his face go pale. He looked up at Jake with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Mr. Morrison," Peterson said slowly, "meet Ambassador Keanu Reeves, the man who has prevented more wars, saved more lives, and done more for galactic peace than any other human in history. The man you just spent the last 20 minutes humiliating in front of 1 million people." Jake's mouth fell open as the words hit him like a physical blow. Around the restaurant, more aliens were standing up, all of them looking toward their table, with expressions of respect and concern. The crystal beings from Rigel were glowing brighter, their colors shifting to what Jake somehow knew meant deep worry. His cameras kept recording everything, broadcasting his shocked face to viewers across the galaxy. The comment stream was exploding now, but Jake couldn't focus on the words rushing past. All he could do was stare at the gentle old man sitting calmly at the table, the man he had just called a nobody in front of the entire universe. Jake's face went completely white as Captain Peterson's words sank in. Ambassador Keanu Reeves. The name hit him like a punch to the stomach. Even Jake, who spent most of his time focused on social media and celebrity gossip, knew that name. "No," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. "No, that's not possible. Ambassador Reeves he's like a legend. He's sitting right in front of you," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "The man you just called a nobody is the most respected human diplomat in the galaxy." Jake's cameras kept recording, broadcasting his shock to over 2 million viewers now. The comment stream had turned into chaos. His followers were frantically searching for information about Ambassador Reeves, and what they found was making them panic. "Oh God, Jake, you messed up bad," read one comment. "That's the guy who saved Europa," said another. "He stopped 3 wars single-handedly," wrote a third, but Jake was too stunned to read the comments. He stared at Keanu, trying to match the quiet old man with the stories he had heard about the legendary ambassador. The man who had walked into alien war zones with nothing but words, and somehow convinced entire civilizations to stop fighting. The human who had earned the respect of species that had never trusted any outsider before. The Centaurian female bowed deeply to Keanu, her silver markings glowing with reverence. "Great peacemaker, we were not told you would be here tonight. Our delegation should have prepared proper honors for your presence." Keanu smiled gently at her. "There's no need for formality, Commander Zara. I'm just here for a quiet dinner before our meeting tomorrow." "Meeting tomorrow?" Jake asked weakly, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Captain Peterson looked at his communicator again, then at Jake with growing anger. "Ambassador Reeves is here for the Galactic Peace Summit. Representatives from 47 different species are coming to discuss the new trade agreements that could prevent conflicts across 3-star systems. And you just broadcast his location to millions of people." Around the restaurant, more alien diners were standing up and approaching their table. Jake saw beings he had only heard about in stories. The crystal creatures from Rigel moved with careful, respectful steps. A group of tall, thin aliens with golden skin that Jake recognized as Altarians whispered among themselves in voices that sounded like singing. An elderly Altarian with intricate patterns carved into his golden skin stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "Ambassador Reeves, we did not expect to see you until tomorrow's formal sessions. It is an honor to be in your presence." Keanu nodded respectfully. "The honor is mine, Elder Thrain. I hope your journey from Altair was comfortable." Jake watched this exchange with growing horror. These weren't just any aliens. These were some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they were all treating Keanu like he was royalty. The Altarians were known for being proud and difficult to work with, yet this elder was speaking to Keanu like an old friend. "I don't understand," Jake said, his voice cracking. "When did you become an ambassador? I thought you were just... I mean, weren't you an actor or something?" Dr. Rodriguez stepped closer, her voice full of disbelief at Jake's ignorance. "Just an actor? Mr. Morrison, Ambassador Reeves has been humanity's chief diplomatic representative for 30 years. He's prevented more wars than any human in history." "But I never heard about any of this," Jake protested weakly. "Because real diplomacy doesn't happen on social media," Captain Peterson said sharply. "It happens in quiet rooms where people like the ambassador save billions of lives without anyone knowing about it." The crystal beings from Rigel had formed a circle around the table, their geometric bodies glowing in patterns that Jake somehow understood meant deep respect. One of them, larger than the others, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Harmony Bringer," the crystal being said. "Your wisdom brought peace to our world when the fire wars threatened to destroy us all. The Rigel Collective owes its existence to your patient words." Keanu looked up at the crystal being with genuine warmth. "The Rigel people chose peace themselves. Prism Singer. I just helped them remember why they wanted to choose it." Jake felt like the world was spinning around him. These aliens weren't just being polite. They were talking about Keanu like he had personally saved their entire civilization. And from the way they spoke, it sounded like he had done it more than once. "The fire wars," Jake repeated numbly. "I remember reading about those. The Rigel system almost destroyed itself in civil war. But that was 20 years ago." 22 years, Keanu corrected gently. "I spent 8 months on Rigel Prime, learning their culture and helping them find common ground. It was one of the most difficult negotiations I've ever been part of." Lisa. Shun, the restaurant manager, finally found her voice. "Mr. Morrison, perhaps now you understand why this table was reserved for the ambassador. He's been coming here for diplomatic meetings for over a decade." Jake's mind raced as he tried to process everything he was learning. The quiet old man he had been bullying was not only famous, but famous for all the right reasons. While Jake made money by creating drama and controversy, Keanu had spent decades bringing peace to the galaxy. His cameras were still recording everything, and Jake could see that his viewer count was still climbing. But the comments had changed. Completely. Instead of cheering them on, his followers were horrified by what they were seeing. "Jake, apologize right now," demanded one comment. "You're embarrassing all of humanity," wrote another. "This is the worst thing you've ever done," said a third, but it was getting worse. Jake watched in real time as his follower count started dropping, not slowly, but in massive chunks. Thousands of people were unfollowing him every minute as word spread about what he had done. A new group of aliens approached the table. These were Draconians, tall reptilian beings with green scales and intelligent yellow eyes. They rarely spoke to humans, considering most of them too emotional and unpredictable. But their leader, a female with golden stripes on her neck, bowed her head respectfully to Keanu. "Peace Speaker," she said in a voice like rustling leaves. "The Draconian Empire still remembers your courage during the Proxima crisis. You walked into our war council alone and convinced 47 clan leaders to choose negotiation over battle. No human before or since has earned such trust from our people." Jake's legs felt weak. The Proxima crisis had been in all the history books. It was the event that prevented a massive war between humans and the Draconian Empire 15 years ago. Millions of lives had been saved when the two species chose to work together instead of fight. "I wasn't alone," Keanu said modestly. "Your people chose to listen, which took far more courage than my speaking." Jake looked around the restaurant and realized that nearly every alien in the room was now standing near their table. All of them were looking at Keanu with expressions of deep respect and gratitude. These were beings from dozens of different worlds, species that often didn't get along with each other, but they all seemed to agree on one thing: Keanu Reeves was someone special. "I need to sit down," Jake said weakly, but all the nearby chairs were occupied by important diners who were now staring at him with disgust. "Captain," Peterson's communicator buzzed again with an urgent message. He read it quickly, and his face became even more serious. "Ambassador, I'm getting reports that this incident is already being discussed in government buildings across human space. The president's office is asking for a statement." Jake's heart sank even further. This wasn't just a restaurant argument anymore. He had created a galactic diplomatic incident by harassing the most important human ambassador in the universe. And it was all being broadcast live to millions of people who were watching him realize what a terrible mistake he had made. Keanu looked up at Jake with those same tired eyes. "I think we should probably talk about this situation, don't you, Jake?" Jake watched his world fall apart in real time. His viewer count had reached 3 million people, but his follower count was dropping faster than he had ever seen. Every few seconds, thousands more people were abandoning his channel. The comments section had become a storm of anger and disappointment. "You just ruined your entire career," one comment read. "How could you not know who Ambassador Reeves is?" demanded another. "This is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen," wrote a third. But the comments from his viewers were nothing compared to what was happening behind the scenes. Jake's personal communicator started buzzing with messages from his sponsors, his talent agency, and his business partners. He pulled out the device with shaking hands and saw notification after notification of bad news. The first message was from Galaxy Sports Drinks, one of his biggest sponsors. Effective immediately, we are terminating our partnership with Jake Morrison due to conduct unbecoming of our brand values. The second was from Stellar Travel Tours. We can no longer associate our company with someone who shows such disrespect. To Galactic leadership, more messages kept coming. Every major company that had paid Jake to advertise their products was cutting ties with him. In the space of 10 minutes, he had lost contracts worth millions of credits. Dr. Rodriguez was watching Jake read his messages, and her expression was a mixture of anger and pity. Did you really think you could publicly humiliate Ambassador Reeves without consequences? This man is respected by every government in human space. Captain Peterson's communicator was also buzzing constantly. He read the incoming messages with a grim expression and shook his head. The Galactic Influencer Council is calling an emergency meeting about this incident. The Earth Social Media Authority wants to review Jake's broadcasting license, and the Federation Diplomatic Corps is considering filing formal complaints. Jake felt like he was drowning. Everything he had worked for over the past 5 years was disappearing because of 15 minutes of bad decisions. His hands were shaking as he tried to process what was happening to his life, but the worst part was still to come. Lisa Chun approached, their table carrying a portable news display, her face pale with worry. Ambassador, I think you should see this. The Galactic News Networks have picked up the story. She activated the display, and Jake saw his own face on screens across the galaxy. The headline read, Human Influencer Harris's Legendary Ambassador Reeves in Shocking Video. The news report was already being broadcast in dozens of languages to billions of people throughout known space. No, 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 Jake whispered, watching the news coverage spread across every major network. This can't be happening. The news anchor, a professional-looking woman from Earth Central News, was speaking in serious tones. The incident, which was broadcast live to millions of viewers, shows social media personality Jake Morrison publicly berating Ambassador Keanu Reeves, apparently unaware of the ambassador's identity or his crucial role in galactic diplomacy. The report cut to interviews with government officials and alien leaders, all of them expressing shock and disappointment at Jake's behavior. A representative from the Centaurian embassy called it deeply concerning behavior from a human who claims to represent Earth culture to the galaxy. Jake watched in horror as his worst moment was analyzed and discussed by experts across the universe. Political scientists were talking about the damage this could do to human-alien relations. Social media experts were calling it the biggest influencer scandal in galactic history. Turn it off, Jake pleaded. Please just turn it off. But Keanu gently shook his head. I think it's important that you see how your actions affect others, Jake. This isn't just about you anymore. The news report continued with more damaging revelations. Jake's past videos were being examined, showing a pattern of aggressive behavior toward service workers, celebrities, and ordinary people. Clips that had once made him famous now looked cruel and ugly when shown in the context of serious news coverage. Mr. Morrison has built his career on confrontational content, the news anchor explained. But tonight's incident crosses a line from entertainment into diplomatic disruption. Jake's personal communicator buzzed again. This time it was a message from his talent agency. We are immediately terminating our representation of Jake Morrison. We cannot continue to work with someone whose actions damage the reputation of our other clients. Another message came from his apartment building on Mars. Due to recent events and negative publicity, we are reviewing your lease agreement and may require you to relocate. Even his personal relationships were falling apart. Messages from friends and family members filled his inbox, all of them expressing disappointment and embarrassment. His own mother had sent a message saying she was ashamed of his behavior. The alien representatives around the table were also receiving communications from their home worlds. Commander Zara, the Centurion officer, was speaking quietly into a translation device. Elder Thrain from Altair was conferring with other members of his delegation. The crystal beings from Rigel were pulsing with colors that Jake was beginning to recognize as concern and worry. The Council of Worlds is asking for an official response to this incident, Commander Zara reported to Keanu. They want to know if this represents changing attitudes among Earth's population toward alien relations. Jake felt a new wave of panic wash over him. Not only had he destroyed his own career, but he might have damaged the relationship between humanity and dozens of alien civilizations. The peace that Keanu had spent 30 years building could be threatened because of one stupid social media stunt. "This is all my fault," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. "I've ruined everything." Captain Peterson looked up from his communicator with a serious expression. "It gets worse, Mr. Morrison. The Federation Security Council is convening an emergency session to discuss whether this incident represents a security threat to ongoing diplomatic negotiations." Jake's legs gave out, and he collapsed into an empty chair at a nearby table. His cameras were still floating around him, still recording everything, but he no longer cared about the footage. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. And he had potentially damaged humanity's standing in the galaxy. The restaurant's main communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Lisa Chun activated the speaker, and a formal voice filled the room. "This is Admiral Sarah Brooks from Federation Command. We are issuing an immediate travel restriction on Jake Morrison pending investigation into tonight's diplomatic incident. Mr. Morrison is not to leave Earth orbit until further notice." Jake stared at the speaker in disbelief. He was now under investigation by the Federation military. The consequences of his actions were spiraling far beyond anything he could have imagined. But through all of this chaos, Keanu remained calm. He had finished his soup and was now watching Jake with those same kind, patient eyes. There was no anger in his expression, no satisfaction at seeing Jake's downfall. If anything, he looked sad to see someone destroy themselves so completely. "Jake," Keanu said quietly, his voice cutting through all the noise and panic. "I think it's time we had a real conversation about what just happened here. Not for the cameras, not for the audience. Just two people talking about how we treat each other." Jake looked up at him through tears he didn't remember starting to cry. The man he had called a nobody was offering him a chance to talk, even after everything Jake had done to humiliate him. It was more kindness than Jake deserved, and somehow that made everything even worse. Jake wiped his eyes and looked up at Keanu through his tears. The restaurant had grown quiet except for the soft humming of alien conversations and the distant sound of Earth spinning below them. His cameras were still recording, but Jake no longer cared about his audience or his content. He had lost everything that mattered to him in the space of an hour. "I don't understand," Jake said, his voice hoarse from shock. "Why are you being nice to me? I just humiliated you in front of the entire galaxy. I called you a nobody. I tried to take your table. I destroyed everything you've worked for." Keanu smiled gently, the same kind expression he had worn throughout the entire confrontation. "Jake, you didn't destroy anything I've worked for. The relationships I've built with our alien friends are stronger than one difficult evening. And as for being nice to you, well, that's what humans do at their best." Commander Zara, the Centurion officer, stepped closer to their table. Her silver markings were glowing with what Jake was learning to recognize as curiosity rather than anger. "Great peacemaker, may I ask why you show such patience with this young human?" His behavior was most disrespectful. Keanu looked up at her thoughtfully. Commander, when I first met your people during the border conflicts, many Centaurians believed humans were too aggressive and emotional to be trusted with galactic citizenship. Do you remember what changed their minds? Zara's large, dark eyes widened slightly. You showed them that humans could choose wisdom over anger, even when they had every right to be upset. But this situation is different. This human attacked you without cause. No, Keanu said quietly. This human made a mistake because he's been taught that creating conflict makes him important. That's not his fault alone. That's something our whole society needs to think about. Elder Thrain from Altair moved closer as well, his golden skin catching the restaurant's lights. Ambassador, the Altarian Council has always been impressed by humanity's capacity for growth. But we are concerned that this incident shows humans moving backward instead of forward. Keanu nodded respectfully to the elder. I understand your concern, Elder Thrain. But I think tonight actually shows something important about humanity. Look around this restaurant. Jake followed Keanu's gaze and saw something he hadn't noticed before. The other human diners weren't cheering for him or supporting his behavior. Instead, they looked embarrassed and ashamed. Dr. Rodriguez and her colleagues were clearly upset by what they had witnessed. Captain Peterson looked like he wanted to personally apologize to every alien in the room. Every human here tonight knows that Jake's behavior was wrong, Keanu continued. They're not proud of what happened. They're disappointed because they know we can do better. The crystal beings from Rigel pulsed with soft blue light, which Jake somehow understood meant they were thinking deeply. The largest one, who had called Keanu Harmony Bringer, spoke in its wind chime voice. This is why the Rigel Collective trusts humanity, it said. Not because humans never make mistakes, but because they recognize their mistakes and try to learn from them. Jake felt a strange warmth in his chest at these words. Even after everything he had done, these alien beings were still willing to believe that humans could be better. It was more forgiveness than he had ever shown to anyone in his videos. I don't deserve this, Jake said, looking around at all the faces watching him. I don't deserve any of your kindness or patience. All I've ever done is tear people down to make myself look bigger. That's exactly why you need it, Keanu said simply. Jake, you're not a bad person. You're a person who's been making bad choices. There's a difference, and the difference matters. Captain Peterson approached their table again, his communicator in his hand. Ambassador, I just received word from Federation Command. They want to know how you'd like to handle this situation. Officially, there are calls for sanctions, investigations, even criminal charges. Jake's heart sank even further. He was about to face the full weight of galactic justice for his actions, but Keanu held up a gentle hand. Tell Federation Command that I consider this matter resolved, Keanu said firmly. No sanctions, no investigations, no charges. Jake made a mistake, but he's learned from it. That's how humans grow. What? Jake stared at him in disbelief. You're not going to press charges? You're not going to demand that I be punished? What would that accomplish? Keanu asked. Punishment might make other people feel better, but it wouldn't help you become the person you could be. And helping people become better versions of themselves is what humans do best. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. Ambassador, if I may ask, what do you think Jake should do now? His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. How does someone come back from something like this? Keanu looked at Jake for a long moment, those kind eyes seeing something that Jake couldn't see in himself. That's up to Jake, but if he's willing to listen, I have some suggestions. Jake nodded eagerly, desperate for any chance to make things right. Yes, please, I'll do anything. There are refugee camps throughout the galaxy, Keanu said. Families displaced by conflicts, species that have lost their home worlds, people who need help rebuilding their lives. Real help, not publicity or social media attention. Just quiet, honest work to make other people's lives better. You want me to work with refugees? Jake asked. I want you to remember what it feels like to help someone without getting anything in return, Keanu explained. To use your energy to build people up instead of tearing them down. To discover that real influence comes from making the world a little bit better, not from making yourself look more important. The alien representatives around the table were listening to this conversation with growing amazement. Commander Zara's markings were glowing brighter as she processed what she was hearing. Extraordinary, she whispered to Elder Thrain. The human shows mercy to his attacker and offers him a path to redemption. No wonder the great peacemaker has earned such respect across the galaxy. Elder Thrain nodded slowly. This is why the Altarian Council believes in humanity's potential. They do not simply punish wrongdoing. They transform it into an opportunity for growth. The crystal beings were pulsing with warm golden light now, their equivalent of joy and hope. The Rigel Collective understands now why humans have become such valued members of the galactic community, the large one said. They show us that wisdom and compassion can be stronger than anger and pride. Jake felt tears running down his face again, but they were different tears now. Not tears of self-pity or fear, but tears of gratitude and hope. This man he had tried to humiliate was offering him a chance to become someone better. I'll do it, Jake said firmly. I'll work with the refugees. I'll try to help people instead of hurting them. I want to learn how to be the kind of human that makes you proud to be human too. Keanu smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached his eyes completely. Jake, you already took the first step just by saying that. The rest is just work. And work can be its own reward. As the evening wound down and the alien delegations prepared to leave, Jake noticed something remarkable happening. The beings who had witnessed his worst behavior were now shaking his hand and wishing him well on his journey. They weren't just forgiving him. They were encouraging him to become better. Commander Zara paused before leaving and spoke directly to Jake. Young human, the Centaurian people believe that anyone who learns from their mistakes deserves a chance to prove they have grown. We will be watching your progress with interest. Elder Thrain offered a formal Altarian blessing. May your future actions bring honor to your species and peace to the galaxy. Even the crystal beings surrounded Jake with their warm light before departing. The Rigel Collective hopes to see you among the refugee camps soon, they sang in harmony. There is much good work to be done. As the last of the aliens left the restaurant, Jake found himself alone with Keanu, Dr. Rodriguez, Captain Peterson, and Lisa Chen. His cameras had finally stopped recording, their batteries drained from hours of footage that Jake would never post. What happens now? Jake asked quietly. Keanu stood up slowly, his meal long finished. Now you start over. You make different choices. You discover what it feels like to make people's lives better instead of worse. And maybe someday you'll understand why that's the most rewarding kind of influence you can have. Jake watched as the most respected human in the galaxy walked away, leaving him with a chance he didn't deserve, but desperately wanted to earn. For the first time in his adult life, Jake Morrison had found something more important than fame, more valuable than followers, and more meaningful than viral videos. He had found a chance to become the kind of human that made other humans proud. To be human too. And in a galaxy where humanity was still proving itself worthy of respect, that chance was the most precious gift anyone could receive.